It's time for the Lisa Benson Show, your home for national security news and commentary. And now, your host, Lisa Benson.
Welcome, America. This is Zudy Jasser sitting in for Lisa Benson, who is on the road in Georgia with the National Security Task Force. Thank you for joining us, and hello to our friends who are listening from around the world. As I said, this is Dr. Zudy Jasser. I'm president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Week after week, this broadcast brings you accurate, measured, intelligent information on national security and foreign policy, commentary not often heard and most often overlooked, and of critical importance to protecting our homeland and our ally Israel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm not only president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, but I'm author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam. I'll be joined by Lisa's co-producer and longtime friend, Jerry Gordon, who's senior editor of the New English Review, former Army intelligence officer and co-producer of this broadcast. And later I'll introduce Ryan Morrow and Waleed Ferris, who are national experts. And we have quite a program for you today. And Jerry, before we get started, and I'll give a little introduction about what we're going to cover, I wanted you to wish our listeners a Happy New Year, which you can do much better than I could.
Thank you, Zudy. For our listeners across the world, especially in Israel, here in America, Lashana Tova Umetuka for the Jewish New Year's. And may you all have a sweet year and happiness and great accomplishments.
Amen. And, you know, our holidays again coincide this year with Yom Kippur and Eid al-Adha are our largest holiday at the end of the pilgrimage to Mecca coming on September 23rd. So an early happy holidays to all of you. You know, today we have so much to talk about, but clearly one of the top things, as many of you may have read Walter Russell Mead's piece in the Wall Street Journal, we see, as he talked about the realities of the migrant crisis into Europe from Syria, there is sort of, and I don't think it's sort of, the reality is there is an unraveling of the world order. And world order is chaotic in the absence of the free world and in the absence of leadership. And what we see coming to fruition with the exodus of millions from Syria is something that could have been preventable. And say what you will about the disasters that have happened in Libya and the tribalism in Libya, we didn't see large exodus of refugees because we ended the Gaddafi regime early. And even Libya is more plagued with tribalism than Syria was. And yet now we see, as Assad has continued, and we see Russia now overtly doing what it's been doing covertly for a long time, and Iran emboldened by our appeasement in their deal. They are basically openly, overtly heralding and proudly hegemonizing Syria and building the Shia Crescent. And we see so many lost opportunities through the Middle East, and especially in Syria. And eventually it will come, as we saw in World War II with the migrant crises, as Germany's hegemonic interest in Europe spread and the Nazis spread. We see untreated cancers in Syria beginning to spread. And we are joined by an all-star lineup today as we talk about what could be done, what should be done, and what should have been done, and beginning to analyze and understand what are the disasters that we see before us, and is there anything we can do with a president in the White House that is historically apathetic to doing anything in a world that needs American leadership. I want to quote Walter Mead's piece in which he said, "The Syrian refugee disaster is a result of the Middle East's failure to grapple with modernity and Europe's failure to defend its ideals. It is the rise of identity politics. It is the pornographic violence against Yazidis and Christians. And he said it's the intersection of their failures and shortcomings that have made this crisis much more destructive and dangerous than it ever needed to be, and it carries with it the risk of more instability and more war and a widening spiral for years to come." So we'll look at this. There are obviously many moving parts of this, be it Turkey, be it Iran, be it Russia. And we'll welcome Ryan in a minute, but I wanted to get Jerry's general sort of 70,000-foot view thoughts on this, Jerry?
Well, we have, as you rightfully quoted Mr. Mead, complete chaos, essentially, in not only the Middle East, but also in Europe. We have broken borders in Europe in which hundreds of thousands have fled, prompted by the actions of the Assad regime and also influenced by Erdogan, an Islamist president in Turkey. And those hundreds of thousands are headed for what they believe and perceive are preferred destinations in Germany, Sweden, France, and even the United States ultimately. And we are not prepared, whether it's in Europe or America, to deal with this issue.
There's no doubt. And, the interesting thing is not prepared not only from the human aspect, but from the political aspect, from the cultural aspects. As so many have said, look at the Saudis. Not only are they not taking in any refugees, they offered to build 200 mosques. Why? Because they see every opportunity for the influx of Muslims to be the spread of Islamism and the destruction of Western freedom and societies based on liberty. So until we have a strategy that looks at the new evil empire of today being the OIC and Islamist hegemony for the neo-caliphate into the 21st century, the Islamists will continue to use every opportunity. They never pass up a crisis for an opportunity to spread their Islamist ideas, and ultimately, in the absence of American embrace of a reform-minded Islam, a reform-minded Islam that ushers in liberty rather than Islamism, I think ultimately our apathy will allow the Islamists, whether it be Saudi Arabia from the Sunni side or Iran from the Shia side, both are two flavors of the same evil of political Islam. And I think briefly we can talk, one thing I do want to mention, Jerry, is, my family in Syria, we've been speaking to them on and off repeatedly for years since this crisis began, much more so. And just this week they told me that, they told us that there have been 5 to 7 million passports issued by the Assad regime, primarily to Sunnis, just in the past few months. So if that doesn't tell you about a strategy, and you wonder where are these coming from, and we'll talk to Ryan momentarily about where these immigrants may be coming from, but ultimately the bottom line is that there is clearly a strategy to depopulate Syria and allow Iran come, and just to remind people, the Assad regime is Alawite. Alawite is a small fringe outgrowth of Shia Islam. So there's no surprise that since the 80s, the Assad regime has been slowly into the 90s working closely to allow Iran to build a stronger relationship, even though the Assad regime was Ba'athist, no different than Saddam Hussein, sort of a national socialist Arabist mentality. But the difference with Saddam is Saddam was Sunni. Assad is Alawite, which is an offshoot of Shia Islam. So thus they've come into the fold of Shia Khomeinism. Jerry?
What we have here is essentially the broad reach of the regime in Tehran to create, as you just described it, a Shia crescent that they hope will spread from the Mediterranean coast all the way through the Gulf, and as we know, what's happened in Yemen, completely surrounding the Arabian Peninsula and the Emirates. That is essentially part of the lasso strategy that the Iranian leadership under Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, President Rouhani, and his foreign minister who negotiated the Iran Pact with our president and Secretary of State are perpetrating. And we're doing very little to combat that.
There's no doubt. And the interesting thing is, the question is where are these immigrants coming from? Why the flood more recently? And is Ryan with us?
I'm here.
Ryan, I'd like to introduce you to the audience. This is Ryan Morrow, who I've known for a long time in our work with the Clarion Project. He is a national security analyst with the Clarion Project, and he is also a professor of counterterrorism. Welcome to the program, Ryan.
Thanks so much for having me.
Ryan, we have a few minutes left in this segment, but if you can tell me, where do you where are most of these coming from? I mean, there's obviously been not only 10 million displaced, 3 to 4 million inside Syria, 5 million outside. For years, they've been going to Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, most of them, some in the outskirt countries. Why all of a sudden into Europe? What's happening now?
That is just, I think, a capacity issue. The fact that the refugee camps have been overflown for so long that you simply have to make the trip to Europe if you want to get out of there. And the dilemma that we face is that it becomes so impossible to process and vet these individuals that come over, even if we want to help them morally. And there was a poll done in November of 2014 where they interviewed 900 Syrian refugees in Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey to try to figure out the levels of extremism and their political beliefs. And what they found among those refugees was that 4% had a positive opinion of ISIS. Another 9% said that they had a somewhat positive opinion of ISIS. So you're looking at 13%, according to this poll, that have some type of affection for ISIS, and that's really very dangerous for us.
There's no doubt that the threat of ISIS sympathies is going to be something that somehow we need to filter for. And yet, we also have to realize that those other 87% are not going into other authoritarian regimes, but they're coming to the West and yet hold within them the solution to Syria because they want to go back. What do you think should be the way to address this huge influx? And is there a way to parse between ISIS supporters versus the anti-ISIS, anti-Assadists who really are on the side of the West?
The only way is going to have to be an ideological screening where we drop the political correctness and we say if we're going to allow you to come into the United States or Europe, we're going to ask you questions related to jihad and religious extremism. And if you want to extend that to non-Muslims and have more generic questioning, that's fine. But we can't focus just on organizational links to groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda because that's not the nature of the threat. And as you go through that longer, more vigorous vetting process that hasn't even been established, then you've got to increase humanitarian aid to try to accommodate those that are trying to flee to Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and elsewhere so that they don't have to come to Europe and the United States. And then we allow in the ones that, like you said, can be part of the solution. And polls show how powerful immigrants that are Muslim that come to the West can be in fighting radical Islam.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned jihad. I think those that are fighting in Syria or believe this is a jihad are not on the side of liberty. Those that believe this is about freedom and a free Syria would be on the side of liberty. When we come back, Ryan, I want to talk about the Dublin Protocol and the tweet from Germany that may have loosened up and sort of accelerated the influx of refugees when we come back.
Michael Medved doesn't think we need more gun control.
There has to be a closer monitoring of individuals who are deeply disturbed and potentially violent. For people who are seriously mentally unbalanced, they shouldn't be able to get a gun, and as a matter of fact, they shouldn't be able to walk around. Really. We don't need gun control as much as we need nut control.
The Michael Medved Show, weekdays at noon, right before Hugh Hewitt at 3, on Intelligent Talk 960, The Patriot.
Lisa Benson and the team of Lisa Benson Consulting have more than 25 years of experience in business development, public relations, strategic planning, and branding of candidates and causes. As a direct result of Lisa Benson's expertise, LBC's record of accomplishments has been witnessed by their many clients who have achieved more than $500 million in bottom-line results. If you're thinking of running for office, starting a nonprofit organization, or have an organization that's in need of gaining greater public attention to meet its goals, give Lisa a call at 602-790-6418. Lisa Benson is a compelling and engaging public speaker with in-depth knowledge on issues such as national security, foreign and domestic policy, and nationwide training on effective grassroots mobilization tactics. Call LBC today at 602-790-6418. That's 602-790-6418 to schedule your free 30-minute consultation or to book Lisa Benson to speak to your group.
2 little tablets is all it takes to get thicker, fuller hair guaranteed. Viviscal is the #1 drug-free hair growth supplement in the U.S., with 1 box being sold every minute globally. It's clinically proven, loved by celebrities, and recommended by doctors. And right now, a 90-day supply of Viviscal is being offered in your area risk-free plus free shipping. Call 800-481-7987. Viviscal nourishes thinning hair from within. It makes thin hair full hair beautiful, and promotes the growth of thicker, fuller hair guaranteed. Viviscal is so effective, 96% of women would recommend it to a friend. Listen to this.
It's vibrant, shiny, bouncy, everything you want your hair to be. I love Viviscal because it works. It completely works.
Want to try Viviscal? Every listener that calls can try it risk-free for 90 days, plus free shipping. Get thicker, fuller hair guaranteed. Call now, 800-481-7987. 800-481-7987. That's 800-481-7987.
This is Lisa Benson, and week after week, I bring you the best and compelling, accurate, measured information to protect Americans and the American homeland. We are a vibrant, growing nationwide audience that reaches listeners not only in Arizona, but throughout the country. If you would like to partner with me and expose your business or organization to this highly qualified audience, please call me at 602-790-6418. My audience is exceptionally loyal, well-educated, affluent consumers. I have various affordable advertising packages available, including simple 30 and 60-second endorsement commercials, as well as inclusion on the Lisa Benson Radio Show website or on my social media platforms. Together, we can grow your business or organization. Give me a call, 602-790-6418.
If you listen to this radio station for 24 hours straight, you'd hear about 250,000 words, and thousands of those words every day come from listeners like you. No one values your opinion more than we do. And when you support our advertisers, you turn words into actions. We know you're not always going to agree with us, but we wouldn't be here without you. So we thank you for listening and supporting our advertisers. 960 The Patriot, a Salem Media Group station.
Listening to The Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
This is Zuhdi Jasser, President of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, sitting in for Lisa Benson, who is on the road in Georgia with the National Security Task Force. So we're also joined by Lisa's co-producer, Jerry Gordon, senior editor of the New English Review and former Army intelligence officer, and also honored to have with us Ryan Morrow, a national security analyst with the Clarion Project and a professor of counterterrorism. Jerry, if you want to, I think, continue on the thought, and I'd like to hear Ryan's thoughts about sort of this Dublin Protocol that there seems to have been a German tweet that some say is responsible for giving the green light to a lot of the refugees. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, basically, we know that not all of the EU, but about 26 states in the EU signed what is called the Schengen Convention. And that was directed at eliminating border control between previous national entities like Germany, Netherlands, France, etc. And part of that was a protocol that was developed in 2004 when the Swiss considered coming in, that basically said that the members of the Schengen system who were initially confronted by, let's say, this current flood of refugees were responsible for, quote, vetting them. And the difficulty that we have, as Ryan has nicely articulated, is that it has been completely swamped to the point now that even today the Germans are reimposing border controls, which they hadn't done previously. And this is the problem that we're faced with in Europe. for what basically was supposed to be a free exchange of goods and people and eliminate unemployment situations amongst the EU, and now it's a disaster.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my understanding is that basically the way the system works is that if you're a Syrian or whoever and you're applying for asylum, then the first country you land in within the European Union, that's where you need to be processed and you need to stay there. And what the tweet said was is that Germany will now not enforce that, meaning everyone can come here. If you are a Syrian who has fled to Hungary or Greece or wherever, you can come into Germany as opposed to just staying where you are. And so that's leading to a huge movement throughout Europe of people that say, okay, well, if I'm not happy with my situation in Hungary, well, there might be better opportunities for me in Germany, or I might have friends and family there. And so that becomes much more difficult to handle when you have such a movement of people going back and forth.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of the underlying issue is, at what point the entire identity of the EU. Some have even said that this may unravel the EU because ultimately, once a refugee gets into one of the EU countries, he's basically free to roam the entire EU, and the only way to stop that was if the EU is unraveled. So we sort of see how a crisis in Syria can unravel to put at stake the entire identity of the West in Europe.
Sure.
Let's talk about Turkey and the Kurds for a second. And, I think that these issues are intimately related. We see, the question of how many of these refugees are coming from Turkey. We see now not only has Turkey in the past few weeks been joining in some of the bombing operations against ISIS, but they, by the way, happen to have bombed some Kurdish areas too. Ryan, what do you think we can learn from what's happening there, either internally, domestically, what's happening in Turkey, or with them actually taking the opportunity to bomb some Kurdish areas?
Well, Turkey, and we all know this, they really don't want Kurdish power to increase and Kurdish independence to increase, even though it would be in the strategic interests of the West. Those that are concerned and opposing Kurdish independence within the United States say, well, it can cause tension with the governments of Syria, Turkey, and Iran, none of which are our friends. But you have Kurdish leadership that are even talking about having peace with Israel. Those are voices that we want to magnify throughout the region to become more common. So why we would want to decrease those voices and that power is really beyond me. But the fundamental issue here is politically within Turkey is that they want to hype up the so-called Kurdish threat beyond just the PKK terrorist group to Turkey, because one of the opposition leaders is a popular young Kurd who stands in strong contrast to Erdogan and the Islamists that are currently in power. So I think that there's some political strategy going on here. And in terms of the refugees, really the only strategy that's going to work, aside from what we talked about, is having a strategy that creates safe zones within Syria so that the refugees have somewhere to actually go and build new lives.
Exactly. That is so true. And, I think it's interesting if you look at the destabilization that has happened there and with the refugees moving out. Jerry, you and I were talking about how Erdogan sees himself in a decreasing minority. If you put his political rivals, that include the Kurds, that include the secularists and other non-Islamists, and I think we see some of this playing out in their foreign policy in the region.
Yes, my knowledgeable sources tell me that Erdogan is really caught in a ruinous gamble. He is engaging virtually every other day in polls, trying to determine if he's got enough votes, essentially, for this upcoming snap election, which he's programmed for November the 1st. He is likely, if he finds out that all of the minority parties are in the majority in the Ankara parliament, would overcome his supermajority to basically continue what is called a caretaker government. He will never realize his quest to become an executive president or the new sultan of the Neo-Ottoman Empire.
Yes,
and what I would add to that is that Erdogan's argument right now is that a one-party state is necessary to fight this war on terror, meaning the PKK, which then they extend to say all Kurds are part of the PKK. I mean, imagine if after 9/11, President Bush said we need a one-party government in order to fight the war on terror. And the trauma that we felt over 9/11 far surpasses what the Turks feel over the Kurdish attacks. So there's no way that line's going to work, and I think he's made a misstep that is in the anti-Islamist favor, because it became clear what he's trying to say and the facade that he's trying to put forth, that the survival of the state requires only having one political party in power.
And that needs to be exposed so much. And that, last year he's giving speeches about the need to end the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which is veiled anti-Semitism. And ultimately, now he's talking about the need to combat Kurdish terrorism, when in fact, for years he did nothing against ISIS. So the hypocrisy, and as you said, the facade is just amazing. When we come back, if I can keep you for one more segment, Ryan, sure. I'd like to talk about the cooked books on ISIS that was released through a Daily Beast report and others in the media that have talked about how the intelligence may not have been wrong, actually, about ISIS that presented to the Obama administration, but rather cooked and presented falsely. So when we come back, let's drill down on what actually was the intelligence about ISIS over the past few years.
Hello, this is Lisa Benson. Everyone jokes about disliking attorneys until they need competent legal representation. That's why I rely on the law office of John J. Jakobczyk for many of my legal needs. John has been in practice for more than 35 years, with a practice encompassing a number of areas of law, including representing individuals and companies in civil and criminal litigation, advising, drafting, and consulting as to contract, corporate, and business matters, and addressing family issues as they relate to adoption, guardianship, conservatorship, and probate. His practice also includes representing those accused of criminal traffic and DUI offenses, as well as personal injury. To schedule a consultation with John J. Jakobczyk, please call him at 602-468-0030. Again, John J. Jakobczyk, 602-468-0030. This is Lisa Benson, and week after week I bring you the best and compelling, accurate, measured information to protect Americans and the American homeland. We are a vibrant, growing nationwide audience that reaches listeners not only in Arizona, but throughout the country. If you would like to partner with me and expose your business or organization to this highly qualified audience, please call me at 602-790-6418. My audience is exceptionally loyal, well-educated, affluent consumers. I have various affordable advertising packages available, including simple 30 and 60-second endorsement commercials, as well as inclusion on the Lisa Benson Radio Show website or on my social media platforms. Together, we can grow your business or organization. Give me a call, 602-790-6418.
This is Michael Medved for Townhall.com. The startling success of the new movie War Room should send a powerful message to the entertainment industry. This little film about the power of prayer working to save a troubled marriage cost $3.5 million to make, and in its first 2 weeks grossed $30 million at the box office. Yes, there's a huge audience of people of faith who will support films with positive religious content. But there's something else noteworthy about War Room that many observers missed. All of the movie's most important characters are black, showing successful, upper-middle-class, religiously connected people who contrast radically with the thugs and drugs in standard exploitative fare about African Americans. Apparently, the black community has responded to these more constructive images with gratitude. About half of the early audience for this film has been African American. War Room gives us a number of reasons to feel encouraged. I'm Michael Medved.
Hey, there he is. How's it going? I'm having a stroke. Are you going to shake my hand or what? I'm having a stroke. Wow, you're not even moving your arm. I'm having a stroke. Are you okay? I'm having a stroke. Your face looks weird, too. I'm having a stroke. Are you having a seizure or something? I'm having a stroke.
When someone is having a stroke, they may not be able to say it with words, but their body language will tell you loud and clear.
I'm having a stroke.
You just need to know the sudden signs. Look for FAST, F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. Or S, speech difficulty. Then T, time. Time to call 911 immediately, because the sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in their recovery. Know the sudden signs. Face, arm, speech, time. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
This is Zuhdi Jasser sitting in for Lisa Benson, who's away with the National Security Task Force in Georgia. I'm the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and I'm pleased to be joined by Lisa's co-producer, Jerry Gordon, senior editor of the New English Review and a former Army intelligence officer, and our guest, Ryan Morrow, a national security analyst with the Clarion Project, who I've worked with for a number of years, and also a professor of counterterrorism. Ryan, thanks for staying with us. The amazing story I think that came out this week is for years, and I'm sure you've had the same question. You speak to audiences and they say, how could President Obama have thought that the ISIS was a JV team? And how could we have missed their growth, not only in Syria, but then the huge expansion where the Ba'athists in Iraq actually seem to be helping them? And we always thought it was an intelligence failure. And now all of a sudden it seems that perhaps it wasn't an intelligence failure, but an intelligence facade. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, from President Obama's perspective, I think that this is a natural outgrowth when you have a group-centric strategy. If you view the enemy as being just specific groups versus the ideology, then when you destroy the leadership and you reduce their numbers and you carry out drone strikes, you're naturally going to say the threat has decreased, and a new group like ISIS is going to lack the experience of the previous group it came from, so they are going to be the JV team. That's a natural conclusion someone with that mindset would have. As for the intelligence related to ISIS, first of all, they got the numbers wrong like 3 or 4 times within the first 6 months in terms of the numbers and the strength, and then not seeing them coming in and taking Iraq or large parts of Iraq. And in recent months, I wrote an article for the Clarion Project where I said the Pentagon statements are just not adding up in terms of the size, where they were saying that ISIS was about 30,000 fighters, the key word being fighters, when they were saying that they've lost 1/4 of the territory in Iraq shortly before they recaptured Ramadi, and the various standards with which they boasted of their success just weren't making sense. And I was trying to figure out, was it spin or did they honestly believe what they were saying based on flawed information? And what we now know based on the reports out there is that there were dozens of people in the intelligence community who felt that their reports were being manipulated by the higher echelons of the military and the intelligence community in order to present a rosier picture of what was going on. Now, do we know that President Obama was necessarily involved in this and said, I'm going to actually deceive the American people about ISIS? That we don't know. There's always that natural problem that you have in governmental systems where people want to please their bosses, and they know that those that have a rosier intelligence product are going to get more influence and have their product read by officials more often. So we don't know the source, but that's the problem.
But Ryan, I couldn't agree with you more. The issue, though, is even beyond manipulation or beyond spin, this is deception. And we have a huge subcommittee now investigating Benghazi, which was based on a similar type of deception. And this is orders of magnitude bigger because of the threat. Now we have ISIS in 50 states. We have a burgeoning counter to Assad and a conflict that has now spread through into Europe. Do you think this should be investigated further, and what are the next steps about this?
Oh, definitely. I was just pointing out that there could be a systematic problem in terms of how the bureaucracy operates, which would actually be more frightening to me than political manipulation, because we know politicians do that. But if you have an actual cultural and structural problem within the system, then the repercussions of that are far more dangerous. But just to give an example of some of the flawed information that I saw coming in when I was writing about this was the fact that it's impossible that 30,000 ISIS fighters control all of this territory. The numbers just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And the key word was fighters. So you would give to the public the presentation that this is a small group, but the reality is that because of that terminology of fighters, you were changing the numbers based on that standard, when we all know that it had to be many times more than that.
And there's no doubt, and I think an administration whose guiding compass was to do as little as possible. That's why those books were cooked. In our last 40 seconds here, you had mentioned safe zones. Do you think at any point we're going to get this administration, or should we get them, to begin to target Assad military, which I think is the only solution in addition to targeting ISIS? But until you create those safe zones, which will need to be targeting the Assad regime, I don't see that there's a solution to this. Do you?
No. Assad and ISIS have a symbiotic relationship. They both benefit from each other. But the first step is, how do you fill that power vacuum? And you have to create a secular democratic rebel force, which we're far behind on.
Thank you so much, Ryan Morrow with the Clarion Project. When we come back, we'll be joined by Waleed Ferris, and we'll talk about the Iran deal and the next steps in Congress and onward with Iran. This is the Lisa Benson Radio Show and National Security Task Force. This is Zuhdi Jasser.
Twitter can get confusing and congested with lots of stuff you don't need or want. So let 960 The Patriot's tweets that matter vet out all the chirping. We follow the important names and only retweet the information that you want to know about. Get commentary on and retweets from the likes of Bill O'Reilly, The Drudge Report, and Charles Krauthammer, and all of your local politicians and national pundits. We do the legwork, and all you have to do is follow us on Twitter today. Twitter.com/960 The Patriot.
Dear friends, are you in the business of serving the community in any professional capacity, such as doctor, dentist, attorney, financial advisor, contractor, or insurance sales? Or are you looking for such services? Do what I did. Check out a company called Honeydews, where they connect people with services. Go to honeydewreviews.com. That's honey, Honey, do, reviews, REVIEWS.com to learn more regardless of where you live in the United States. Honeydewreviews.com matches professionals with active consumers. Again, honeydewreviews.com, where they are putting American patriots to work. www.honeydewreviews.com.
The market goes up and the market goes down. It always has and it always will. But if you are in or near retirement, do you really have the time to wait for the market to go through these cycles? Think about it. Having your money invested in the market is like walking up a flight of stairs. But instead of moving up one step at a time, every third step you have to go back down 2 steps or more. Remember the story about the guy who was sentenced to an eternity of rolling the rock up the hill, only to have it roll back down every time he got close to the top? Sound familiar? Using our advanced planning, saving for retirement is like riding up an escalator. Nice, steady growth without any risk of ever falling down. Guaranteed. So stop trudging up the steps and hop on the worry-free, zero-risk escalator to retirement. Pick up the phone and call us now to receive your free Safe Money Information Kit. Call 1-877-51-RADIO. That's 877-517-2346.
Lisa Benson and the team of Lisa Benson Consulting have more than 25 years of experience in business development, public relations, strategic planning, and branding of candidates and causes. As a direct result of Lisa Benson's expertise, LBC's record of accomplishments has been witnessed by their many clients who have achieved more than $500 million in bottom-line results. If you're thinking of running for office, starting a nonprofit organization, or have an organization that's in need of gaining greater public attention to meet its goals, give Lisa a call at 602-790-6418. Lisa Benson is a compelling and engaging public speaker with in-depth knowledge on issues such as national security, foreign and domestic policy, and nationwide training on effective grassroots mobilization tactics. Call LBC today at 602-790-6418. That's 602-790-6418 to schedule your free 30-minute consultation or to book Lisa Benson to speak to your group. Check out the Seth Leibson Show podcast page at 960thepatriot.com, where you can replay every minute of every show. The Seth Leibson Show, where it's principles, not politics. Weekdays from 9 to 11 p.m. on Intelligent Talk 960 The Patriot.
Got an iPhone, BlackBerry, or smartphone? Download the Patriot app for your phone. Just go to your app store or log on to 960thepatriot.com today. The Patriot.
You're listening to The Lisa Benson Show for National Security Matters. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome by leaving a comment on www.lisabensonradio.com.
This is Zuhdi Jasser, filling in for Lisa Benson, who's away with the National Security Task Force in Georgia. And I'm honored to be joined by Jerry Gordon, a former Army intelligence officer, senior editor of the New English Review. And now we're honored to bring onto the program Dr. Waleed Phares, a colleague who we cross paths with frequently on Fox News. He's the author of The Lost Spring, U.S. Policy in the Middle East and Catastrophes to Avoid, among 13 other books, including his bestseller, Future Jihad, and also a frequent advisor to the U.S. House of Representatives on counterterrorism. Waleed, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zuhdi, and all your guests. And thank you for your service. And yes, you and I have been working together for a decade now. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And you know, the two things I want to cover with you are Iran and also to get your opinion. I talked to family in Syria just this week, and we've heard now that Assad is releasing millions of passports of Sunnis to push the exodus of Sunnis. But first, the big story this week, the past few weeks, has been the Iran deal, and I don't want to go back and do the posthumous discussion of this deal that's done with the 42 Democrats now that have agreed to block any type of protest of it. But where do we go from here? What is the status in Congress this week? What can happen to try to avert this, and is there any way to prevent, and I'm telling you this as an American Syrian, is there any way to prevent that $150 billion from being released to Iran?
I think your last statement is the core statement. Everything has to do with this deal, such as will the Iranian regime take advantage to reorganize its nuclear power or not. That is medium and long term. But what is really lethal in the core of the agreement, should Congress be able or not to delay, to intercept, or should other factors in the region occur, because we could talk about that as well, is really the transfer of these billions of dollars. Now, I don't have specific information about what billion will get to Tehran, soon. But we know from open sources is that between now and the end of this year, there will be $7 billion, which is small. And then at the beginning of the year, there'll be dozens of billions that will hit the Iranian banks, owned, of course, as you know, by the Pasdaran, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. This money is not going to the Iranian people. I mean, I had many arguments on Al Jazeera and other media in the region, and even in our American media, about this is the Iranian money. This is not the Iranian regime money. It is as if Britain would be sending French frozen assets in World War II to the Vichy government. That's the equivalent. Not to de Gaulle, but to the Vichy government. That's very, very serious. So, really, what this money is going to do, part of it we know. Other parts maybe we don't know. And the most serious is that the Iranian regime is going to be building, let me explain it that way, a dome, a strategic dome. They are going to be, and they will be receiving S-300 from Russia. That would be advanced missiles to deter any aviation, any air force, should it be Saudi or Jordanian or Israeli or, for that matter, American. They'll be receiving tanks, very advanced. They will be equipping the Iranian armed forces and the Pasdaran in a way that has not been seen since 1979. We are funding the military and strategic forces of the Iranian regime. But more important, they're going to be sending a lot of money to Hezbollah, to all their allies in Syria, Assad, in Iraq, in Yemen. And let me add one last thing. They're going to be super funding, and this has to do with the war of ideas worldwide. Every single blogger, every single media, every single TV station in the Middle East and internationally that would actually defend the Iranian regime. So what these 150 billion vitamins are going to do, they're going to create a different Iran.
Exactly.
So I wanted to begin with this. Yeah, we begin with this so that we could all answer your other question, which is very important. What can we do now about this tidal wave?
Exactly. For those of you who have been complaining for years of Sunni Saudi infiltration into the West and globally through Al Jazeera, etc., hold on to your socks, because now Khomeiniist Islamism is going to be spreading around the world thanks to the release of sanctions and the normalizing of lobby groups like the NIAC in the West. So what do we do now to block this? Conservatives control both houses of Congress. Why do they have to release the money?
Well, first we need to buckle up, because this money is being released by the administration. I mean, it has been, whatever was frozen by executive action, executive decisions, will be just, and is maybe being now released to them. There is a bulk of that money that needs new legislation, and that is where the resistance would begin. In the House, there will definitely be enough votes to block any removal of any legislation that is putting sanctions. In the Senate, there'll be a battle, but they have, technically, as far as I heard, a simple majority that will block that. That's number one. Number two, what I have been pushing for, and you know that, is the counterattack, a political counterattack, while waiting for the end of this administration, where there is the whole Iranian opposition out there that is waiting. And they are the ones who really can block a lot of the aggressive policies. Because you mentioned something, I know we won't have enough time for it. What the Iranians are doing are demographic changes in Iraq and in Syria. I mean, I know that's another subject, but there are many things that this regime is doing while they're trying to block graphic ethnic cleansing of Sunni moderates in Syria. So the Iranian opposition is probably now the best partner for the international community of people who want to change those things to partner with.
Exactly. And Jerry was mentioning to me before, Jerry, you sent me Amir Tahiri's editorial in I think it was Sharq al-Awsat, that talked about how Rouhani's, the documents haven't really even been translated, and Rouhani really doesn't even look at this as an agreement. It's really more of a political document that has very little standing. Jerry, do you want to add something? Let's get Waleed's opinion on that.
I think Waleed aware that the Iranians have broken virtually every international agreement. Just look at the negotiations that the EU conducted that went up in smoke in 2009, just as Obama was coming into office to do outreach, essentially, to the regime. And so that we cannot trust this theocratic, apocalyptic Islamo-dictatorship to essentially comply with either an inspection regime or essentially with release of, for example, our 4 American prisoners, one of whom we think is gone completely. So this is really a terrible predicament to be caught in, with an administration that basically has said, we don't care about all this stuff. We're just going to cut off Iran from all the pathways to a bomb, which a lot of us believe they may already be on the verge of having.
Waleed?
Absolutely, I agree with my good colleague, Dr. Gordon. And I don't even go there. Where I'm situated right now, because I agree fully with what he has said, is that after 32 years of monitoring this regime, my debate and arguments are not about will they apply or not apply. We know that this is a regime that has a strategy, and the deal is part of their strategy. So it's not like South Africa or Ukraine after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They were discussing with the UN how can we end the nuclear programs that they had, and their intention was to end them. What we have right now is a regime that the intention of is to progress across Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and Yemen, and together, of course, a balance of power with the Israelis, and then, of course, explode throughout Africa, Latin America. We're dealing with a much, much bigger thing. I think that the deal is an actual strategic disaster for the national security of the United States and of the international community. And it's going to take tremendous efforts worldwide, this Congress and the next administration, to begin the reversal of this disaster.
And Waleed, I never would have even imagined thinking. I always thought that ultimately, because the rebels and the revolution had a huge majority. I mean, you had out of the 23 million Syrians, 15 million or more that really felt they wanted to get rid of the Assad regime. And unfortunately, it grew into radicalizing into ISIS in 2013. But I never imagined that there'd be a formula in which they could actually lose Syria. And do you think before Obama leaves, we're going to see the loss of Syria, where there's enough Sunnis that leave to where you're left with an Iranian client state?
Let me try to be as precise as possible. What the Iranian regime is trying to do now, along with Assad and Hezbollah, the Khomeini side of jihadism in Syria, of course they won't be able to remove all the Sunni majority of Syria. They are creating corridors. They are doing ethnic cleansing in areas. Because I've been looking at the map and speaking with NGOs and people inside Syria, and it's very clear. They are removing villages, or they are pushing civilians, moderate Sunnis, from villages and towns who are along the line between Iraq and Damascus, and then along the line between Damascus and Homs and Hama, and along the line all the way to the Mediterranean. At that same time, Russian military build-up is happening along the coast. You don't need to be a political scientist to figure out what is being happening. They are cleansing enough population from these areas so that the Iranian regime will have access to the beaches of the Mediterranean through these corridors. That's what is actually happening. Unfortunately, Congress is really late in holding hearings, showing the maps, and explaining what is happening.
But my family's telling me that they've produced 5 to 7 million passports in the past few months for Sunnis. What is that all about?
Yeah. Well, you add that. I didn't even know about that number. Now, thank you for providing me with that number. That is clearly indicative of the intention of the Assad regime to remove this population, giving them passports. They can flee with these passports. By the way, have you noticed that among the refugees in Europe, you have almost no or one or two Alawites? Yeah. Or elements who are basically the supporters of the Assad. What would that mean? Yes, of course, there are many among them who are supporters of Muslim Brotherhood or maybe ISIS and others. Yes, it makes sense because this is a chunk of the Sunni population that have been moved out. And you're going to count 10%, 8% who favors these Salafis. We know that. Yeah. And obviously among them, you're going to find this kind of infiltration.
Exactly. So you're saying the next few weeks, what should our strategy be for those who are national security wise and are trying to prioritize the approach? Will it be to try to find smart methods of preventing the release of the monies? Any loopholes in which we can block the deal? What do you think should be the motivation of the collective, those who are smart about what should be done in the Middle East?
Divided in two directions. One direction is really Congress. Congress has the lead, has the power. It's the only branch of government that can do something to slow some parts of what's happening or to stop some other parts. The House can do a lot, first by finally unleashing those hearings and briefings on this issue, inviting people from the ground to speak. Through this program, I would call on Congress to invite leaders from the Iranian opposition and the Syrian civil society people to address the American public. This debate, without the Iranians and the Syrians and the Lebanese in America, will remain a debate between a mainstream apologist media machine and very few lawmakers and then, few talking heads. So this needs to change. On the other hand, obviously, there needs to be as you just mentioned, many, many ways to stop, including by legal ways. Many Americans, many other non-Americans should go to court and stop and demand to stop the transfer of money. This is not the ownership of the Iranian regime, and then many have been victimized by the Iranian regime, and that should be another way to slow down what is happening.
Jerry, any comments as we finish this segment?
Well, I think Waleed has given us a complete disclosure of how bad this chaos is, the looming threat of ethnic cleansing in traditional areas in the Middle East, and how Iran's regime has got away with nearly $100 billion of sequestered funds to fuel global terrorism in the region and against us.
So we have such a challenge ahead of us. This is Zuhdi Jasser. It's been a pleasure to sit in for Lisa Benson on the Lisa Benson Radio Show. Waleed, thank you so much for your time. There's always so much to talk about. And as I started at the beginning of the program, we see the unraveling of the world order with refugees, with ISIS, with a lack of leadership from the free world. And hopefully, as we move forward, we can harness those of us who understand what's happening and care about American security and the security of Israel to get some focus and defeat our enemies. This is Zuhdi Jasser filling in for Lisa Benson. Thank you.